There was this experiment done, and throughout the cinema goers, all the cinema goers go in and they all sit down. There was an experiment done where they would flash to 1/16 of a second the words "eat more popcorn" and "drink Coca-Cola." And what they find in the experiment is that their sales exponentially rose. I think it rose to like 57%. More Coca-Cola was bought, and more popcorn was eaten. And the point is that we know that we're created with free will, but the enemy, and specifically those who sort of go down the idea that free will can be corrupted, we're certainly seeing that. Now, we're seeing it more and more since 1957, when actually the science was quite rudimental, and now we're seeing it to the point that it's been sophisticated to that actually when I was looking into the information of this and doing the research, and I popped up and I've been typing it in so much that actually an ad popped up for me to have subliminal messages into my marketing. So it was actually a company that says that we can do this for you, and it pops it up. So obviously the algorithm's picking up what is needed, that I got an interest in subliminal messages, and this pops up more and more. Now, if you look at this, I want you to turn to 2 Timothy chapter 3. And I'm going to start from verse 1, but really it's about verse 6 that I'm getting into. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And from such people turn away. For of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives of gullible women. And that's only because women were, in culture terms, the ones who would actually be in the house. Of gullible women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts. Now, this is prophetic, because actually what you tend to find, and studies have shown, that when people are getting up and they're streaming and they're watching TV, and then something happens in their day that they start to realize they're depressed or they're anxious or they're fearful. And then psychologists have went in and actually been able to trace back it is to something they've watched or something they've listened to throughout the day that's caused a state of anxiety, a state of fear, a state of worry. Now, what has happened now is we're living in this with steroids, right? In the sense that media now is media on steroids. And what we've done is we've said, right, we'll set our kids in front of it. Or, we'll just sit there and we'll just watch Netflix or whatever it is streaming at us for hours and hours and hours. Now, one of the things that I noticed, I'm wondering if, I don't know, actually, I'll just tell you the ones in Disney rather than showing you, right? So there was the likes of The Lion King. You've probably seen this before. Has anybody seen this before? In The Lion King, there's a part in which Simba sort of just drops his weight. He's sitting on the mountain ridge, and dust flies up into the earth. And when it's freeze framed, when it's actually slowed down, it spells out the word sex. Now, those who created this have actually, like the animators in this, admitted, yes, there was secret coding done within the film. Why do the word sex? Because regardless of what anybody thinks, sex sells. Now, we also know from quite recently that Disney has had a sexual agenda in promoting LGBTQ narrative and sexualizing children from a very young age. Do you remember the Rescuers? Do you remember the wee mice? Yeah, and they would have been on the back, like there was a freeze frame. You can actually look at this, right? Go on YouTube and look at this. I'll show you, I could show you it, but the problem is that there's more graphic pictures that popped up without me noticing. But they slow it down, and whoever had done the editing for the Rescuers film had included a pornographic picture, not an animated pornographic picture, a pornographic picture of a live human being, a live woman, with a naked live woman in the window of a building that they fly past, right? Now, this is all because your subconscious takes this in. You could be sitting there and you could, it's like you learn this in neuro-linguistic programming, but this is neuroframing, right? This is the idea that your brain works at such a high intensity that your eyes and your consciousness does not compute all that comes in, but your subconsciousness does. So for instance, like there was experiments done before with movie makers. These movie makers who were trying to make horror films, they would play an audible sound, right? Because it comes in through your ear or eye gate, as the scripture tells us in Matthew. Your ear and eye gate are to be guarded. But this audible sound is not audible to the adult ear. But what it does do is, in your subconscious, it produces a feeling of anxiousness and nauseation, right? So you're nauseated and you're anxious while you're watching this horror film. And the director admitted that he does this. He puts this in his films for the simple reason that he wants to invoke that reaction. Now, some of you could say, well, that's okay, that's a film and people are going for the experience, but this is done throughout. There was an ad done for, do you remember Marlboro cigarettes? And they done this ad, and I'll describe it, right? So they done a study. This was this is proven, this is out there, right? You can actually go and get a degree in this stuff. But the Marlboro ad, it's a picture, and it's two cowboys riding their horses with a mountain in the frame, right? So there's a mountain behind them in the frame. Now, one of the things that they did is they had a control to the experiment and they had the actual experiment, right? So the control to the experiment, they airbrushed part of the mountain so it just looked like a normal ridge. And with the actual experiment, the actual ad that they put out, they contained a male member part, so a male body part in the mountain ridge. And they found that that promoted their sales exponentially. I think it was something like 200% more Marlboro cigarettes were bought by people who had seen that ad. So this is constantly in your focus. And why is that important? Because we're living in a time now in which the narrative of things is so out there. Right now, we listen to VNRs, the news cycles that are paid for and promoted, and you don't know whether that person's a real reporter or a scientist or a marketeer, someone actually trying to put out their narrative. Now, what has happened over the likes of the last 2 years? Right? What has happened over what we're seeing in the news, right? So I'm just going to go back to this 2 seconds. Let me just share this. And let me put this on.
Corporations could be.
So
people don't need to.
I'm going to go past this, right? You've seen this, right? You remember that, like all of this, stay home, save lives, and this was put out. And what happened to anybody else who came out with a counter narrative to what the conglomerate owners of the media, who are putting out their VNRs, their idea of paid promotions of what they believe is right or what they want to promote. Now, I don't know if you remember this as well. Pfizer, there was a video going around YouTube and it was going around social media, and it was all of these news stations from CNN, even to Fox, all of them, right? And they were all sponsored by Pfizer. So you have different things, just all this media sort of thrown out. And look at this ad here, protect your family and others. So it's to invoke this sort of unconscious response, and it's all throughout this basic ad. The fact that you've got someone younger, you've got someone older, and the fact that the young must take this injection to save the old. And this is the narrative that has continued to be pushed right to now, and it's continued to lead us along a different path. Now, what about with the Ukraine war? And when the Ukraine war came out, this was an actual, let me see if I can make that smaller. Oh, no, it's not them. This was an actual advertisement that came out, like a thing on social media. And it's a Russian soldier dressed as if he's a Nazi, and it's talking about, it's already set in the scene. So the news cycle is promoting who's right and who's wrong before you have a chance to equate what the actual facts are. You had people like Zelensky, who is at every photo op. Sure, look at this, right? Time magazine do this in the middle of a war, the man in the middle, and they're making him, your focus. And the idea is, with all of this messaging, is that you're now going to see him in a certain light. Now, that could be not a hop, skip, and a jump to how the Antichrist gains power. You've seen this one. Vogue magazine coverage in the middle of a war. They have great time for a, an airbrushed photo shoot. But I want you to look at this stuff, because it's not going to be a hop, skip, and a jump, like I said, until the Antichrist system and people start taking this 666 and start taking the mark based on subliminal leading, right? It says in John 10:27 that when it talks about the sheep of Jesus, right, the sheep of God, that they hear his voice, they know who he is. Now, there's a difference between the sheep and the goats. The goats just listen and are fed and are led. The sheep are fed purely by the shepherd. The goats eat everything, including the plate. Now, I want to ask yourself this. Are you awake yet? Now, let me see if I can go.
Embedded technology, stacking capability, and ability to make your own AI-powered custom subliminals. Subliminal Club is the only subliminal creator that conducts their own scientific studies to validate their product's effectiveness. Don't believe us? Speak directly to our clients through our online forum. Your growth is inevitable. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Experience Subliminal Club today.
There we go. Come off that there. So basically, what I'm trying to point out to you is there's a massive attack right now on free will. There's a massive attack on the ability to make critical decisions. It takes 2 minutes to switch off the frontal lobe when you're watching something streamed directly through your eye gate. And why is your frontal lobe important? Because that is where people say your critical thinking sits. Right? So all critical thinking decisions sit within the frontal lobe, but your frontal lobe goes to sleep and you just start to absorb everything that they feed you. And then you see that people are completely, people who rise up right now are completely oblivious to the facts, completely oblivious to truth, and they become hardened to truth. Now, this gets you into thinking about what happens in Romans 1. In Romans 1, verse 28, it says that the people become of a debased mindset. Right? They choose not to keep God in their knowledge, and therefore they become of a debased mindset. In other words, the critical thinking is switched off. How do we know that? Because Paul tells us that there's evidence for God everywhere. In every creation, in every element of creation, there's evidence for God. We see this. And because there's such evidence for God, it takes someone to have their frontal lobe switched off or gone to sleep so that they absorb what the narrative is coming through the media. Now, we know this, right? Like I sit and I talk to a child and I ask a child about evolution, right? And a child, when I talk to him or question about evolution, has the same questions that evolution has not been able to answer even at its deepest level and its highest tier, right? If we talk about that we've evolved from apes, the first question I've been asked by children when I've talked about this with them is, why are there still apes? These are basic questions, right? And when we talk about the sense of evolution, and then you break it down into its even, finer detail. How does an eye evolve abstract from the rest of the body, which obviously has to take place at some level in the point of macroevolution. And the only evidence that we have is for microevolution. But here's the thing. You ask any adult right now, what do they believe? Now, I'm not talking about the church. But I'm talking about if you go out in the street and you ask them, what do you believe? Do you believe that you're specially created, or do you believe in evolution? The majority will just go, oh, evolution. Why? Because it's fact. Because we've been told so. Yes, it's been a switching off of your frontal lobe to the point that it's force fed down your eye gate and your ear gate, and everybody's went like this. Now, in this scripture in 2 Timothy 3, it talks about this in verse 8, right? It says, talking about these people who are always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of truth. In other words, they're always absorbing information, but the critical part of their thinking is switched off. Now, as Jannes and Jambres resisted Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds disapprove concerning the faith. Now, what I'm talking about, the Romans 1 mindset is coming into being at full force. And if you look at who Jannes and Jambres were, I've talked about them before. These were guys who were part of Pharaoh's house. They were two magicians, okay? And these two magicians were part of Pharaoh's house. And whenever Moses came in and transformed the serpent, Aaron's staff into the serpent. These guys replicated it, right? And these guys were resistant to the truth of Moses, but they didn't turn their back on Moses, right? Most people don't actually go into this, right? The Jewish history tells you, and when you look at the book of Yashar and stuff, it tells you as well that Jannes and Jambres left Egypt at the point of the Exodus, and they went with the children of Israel. Now, why did they go with the children of Israel if they were completely resistant and hesitant to truth? They went because they were there to do what it says in 2 Timothy 3, to creep in and to give an alternative. If they keep coming out, and showing they are coming out with the contradiction to the word of God, if they keep trying to deny the glory of God, eventually the people who are just switching off their frontal lobe and just listening and just absorbing and not critically thinking about what is being force-fed to them, take it on. In fact, these two people were seen to be involved in Korah's rebellion, right? So whenever they rebelled against Moses, these two people were seen to be, in Jewish history, critically involved in it. And this is important because I personally think right now we're seeing a prophetic happening of that. We're seeing so much bombard our eye gate and ear gate that people are going, yes, I'll believe what I'm told as opposed to what I see, what I hear, and what my critical thinking tells me. Churches right now who refuse to accept that we're in an end time scenario, that we're in the end of times, despite the fact that the Bible tells you we are in 1 John, but also they ignore the signs. One of the big things, they've been pre-programmed to shut down their frontal lobe and listen to the man on the screen tell them exactly how to think and what to do. It's the same with war. It's the same with the Ukraine. It's the same with Russia. Russia's bad. Russia's causing all of the food crisis across the world. It is Russia who is causing starvation. It's Russia who's causing inflation. You shut down your frontal lobe till you believe everything the guy on the screen, Joe Biden or whoever is speaking, says. And you don't go, well, 1 + 1 = 2. So you shut down the economies across the world for 18 months at least. In that, whenever you shut them down, then you decide to shut down major food production plants, fertilizer plants. Then you make it near impossible for farmers to get the PTO fertilizer that they need. Then you turn around and you say, we'll pay you 5,000 a cow to kill a cow because we don't need meat in a food crisis. And then at the same time, you see ads popping up everywhere. Why you shouldn't eat meat, you should eat insects. And what happens is they get the celebrities, because you're used to listening to what all these celebrities say. They get the celebrity, they get the Angelina Jolie, they get the Nicole Kidman and all to come on and go, insects, aren't they good? And everybody goes, oh, wow, we should maybe be eating insects as a sustainable form of protein as opposed to beef. Do not, just warn, do not ever, if I come to your barbecue or whatever, offer me a locust burger or anything like that. I ain't eating it, right? This is the thing is, here's the thing, even take that further, right? The protein element that is found in beef, we know that when we're starved of protein, and they've proven this through studies in the past, they've done it back through World War II, that when you starve the people of protein, they become more docile, so that they know that what the gas chamber equates to, they will still walk there. See, when you're not having the protein, you become more docile. And then when you become more docile, this, I'll just sit here and believe whatever I'm told. And this is the thing. Look, I am anything but a conspiracy theorist. I do not believe in reptilian people. I do not believe in all of this nonsense. But I tell you what I do believe. I do believe there's a satanic agenda happening. I do believe the world has been privy to the biggest mass SRA production, satanic ritual abuse across the world for the last couple of years, that we've been pre-programmed into doing what the government tells us as opposed to critically thinking. And you have to ask yourself, where's this going? Now, I know according to the Bible where it's going, but how fast are we going there? Whenever you see this, how fast are we going there? Satanic ritual abuse. One of the major factions of satanic ritual abuse is confinement. One of the things that they do is they confine your movement. So when you see a Satanist, now this is taken right out of the FBI handbook for this, when they would have went into cults, you see a Satanist group try and abuse someone, the first thing they do is they cage them up, they confine their movement, they won't let them out at certain times, they will only let them out when they say they can go out, and when they say they can go out, the person becomes more pliable, the person becomes more agreeable because they think that they're getting a treat to be let out for half an hour a day. I'm pretty sure I've seen that somewhere before, but on a mass scale. And you don't understand that if this is happening, the point of this is compliability and pliability and the gullible nature of mankind, to the point that they creep in, like in 2 Timothy 3:6 says, they creep in and they cause people to enter into various sins. You know, it surprises me that I think the world's the general population, I think it's in the UK, it's like it's less than 1% that are, you know, openly gay. It might go up to about 3% that are off the LGBTQ tier, right, as in that spectrum. But you watch a program on television, and I defy you to watch that program, whether it's a soap, and I don't watch those, or whether it's a drama made now, and you don't find someone in that lifestyle. Now, we've seen this as parents in kids shows, where that lifestyle is promoted in kids shows. Now, what you're finding then is that there's an increase in those who now identify on that spectrum of LGBTQZRT, whatever it is, right? Who identify in that because they're seeing it boom through. And when you now see the crisis of identity, well, what's the area that you can't publicly speak about without being seen as committing a hate crime? It's trans. If you turn around and publicly start talking, and I'm not talking within the church, I'm talking about in a public forum, and you say, well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with you know, a man becoming a woman or a woman becoming a man. And I will not use those pronouns. You're automatically demonized. And when you're demonized, that's because that subject cannot be touched. Why? Because that subject is now being pushed. It is being pushed in a demonic agenda through the spirit of the media to infiltrate the minds of our children. What did I say at the very start? A 9-month-old. Advertisers know that if they can direct programming to a 9-month-old by 2 years old, they've got brand loyalty. So if they're putting out, if you like dressing up as a girl and you're a child, that means that you're in the wrong sex. If you're a boy, that means you're in the wrong sex. Listen, here's open confessions right now. My mom will tell you that up until like the age of 5, I quite often would have been in her high heels and wore a handbag. But, you know, that's a confession. I was not trans. I was not gay. I like to dress up, right?
Made you taller?
Yeah, that's probably it. It is probably it, in fairness. But this is the thing. A child who, you know, if you see a boy and a boy plays with a Barbie, they go, oh, must be a girl. God's got it wrong. No, God did not get it wrong. You're now directing everything you do at that, and they're receiving through the media, oh, well, that confirms it. If you like that, it confirms it. It's